air in the interrogation chamber tasted of ozone and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Forlac, subcommander of the Sylvan Hegemony's 3rd Pacification Fleet, watched the human through the observation glass. The creature was unimpressive. Soft skin, no natural carapace, a fragile bipedal structure. It sat slumped in the neural-restraint chair, its uniform a simple gray jumpsuit, torn and stained. Standard procedure for a captured enemy officer. Standard, until it wasn't. He has offered no tactical data. A subordinate clicked, mandibles quivering. Biometric readings indicate elevated stress, but his verbal responses are obstructive, and he smiles. Constantly. Forlac's primary eyes narrowed. A smile, a baring of teeth. In most species, a threat display. In humans, according to preliminary cultural briefings, it could mean anything from joy to aggression to profound psychological distress. This one smile was a thin, unwavering line. Obstruction is a luxury for those with time, Forlac stated, his voice a dry rasp. We have pacified 17 systems. His solitary vessel was a gnat against our hulls. His defiance is a performance without an audience. He entered the chamber. The human's eyes, too pale, blue orbs devoid of nictitating membranes, tracked him. The smile remained. Designation, Kalen Reed. Rank, Commander, Terran Exploratory Vessel Astrid. Forlac began reciting the data. Your vessel is dust. Your crew is dead or in containment. The hegemony has offered terms to your homeworld. They have 30 of your hours to submit. You possess no leverage. Provide the access codes to your ship's core log, and your containment may be made more comfortable. Kalen Reed shifted, the restraints humming as they adjusted. He didn't speak for a long moment, his gaze drifting past Forlac to the sterile, gray wall. Then he chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Comfortable. Right. His voice was rougher than the bioscan suggested it should be. You glassed New Thessa on your way here, didn't you? The long-range scanners caught the thermal bloom. 3 billion people. You call that pacification? It was a demonstration of resolve, Forlac corrected, unmoved. A necessary reduction of militant infrastructure. Necessary, Reed repeated, and the chuckle bloomed into a low, genuine laugh. It was a sound that didn't belong in the cold silence of the chamber. It raised the fine hairs on Forlac's sensory palps. You know, on Earth we have a saying. Talk softly and carry a big stick. You guys, you just have a really big stick. You forgot how to talk. The insolence was calculated. Forlac had seen this before in primitive species. Bravado in the face of annihilation. It was a final, pathetic grasp for dignity. He would crush it. Your cultural aphorisms are irrelevant. The stick, as you call it, is all that matters. The codes. Now. Reed leaned forward as far as the restraints allowed. His smile finally faded, replaced by an unsettling calm. You didn't even look at the wreckage of the Astrid, did you? Too busy counting your victory. Just another piece of human junk to be swept aside. A flicker of unease, cold and sharp, pricked at Forlac's thorax. The Astrid had died easily, true. A single volley from a point defense battery had gutted its engines. It had offered no return fire before its life support failed. A civilian vessel, as suspected. The salvage teams had reported nothing of strategic value. The wreckage is inert, Forlac stated. Is it? Reed asked, his head tilting. Or is it that your sensors are only programmed to look for weapons that make sense to you? Big energy signatures. Plasma coils. Mass drivers. He barked another short laugh. You're so advanced you've forgotten how to think like something that isn't. The insinuation was a needle. Forlac's patience, a finite resource, expired. He gestured with a clawed limb. A guard near the wall activated control. The neural restraint chair pulsed, and Reed's body arched violently. A silent scream locked his throat, muscles straining against the bio-weave straps. Agony, clean and clinical, fed directly into his nervous system. Forlac watched the human's biometric spike on the wall display. Heart rate soaring, neural activity erupting in frantic bursts. After 10 seconds, the pulse ceased. Reed sagged, breath coming in ragged, Wet gasps. Spittle flecked his chin. The chamber was silent save for the hum of machinery and his tortured breathing. Then he started laughing again. It was a ragged, broken sound, wheezing out from lungs that couldn't seem to find air. Tears streamed from his squeezed-shut eyes, cutting tracks through the grime on his face. But the laughter persisted. It wasn't defiance anymore. It was something else. Something that felt like recognition. Like a horrible, private joke only he understood. Forlack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's climate control. Pain was a universal language. Fear was a universal currency. This hysterical mirth in the face of utter physical torment was a dialect the species had no translation for. It was an error in the logic of the universe. Why do you laugh? Forlack demanded, his clinical detachment cracking. You are broken. You are defeated. Reed managed to open his eyes. They were bright with pain and something else, a terrifying, lucid gleam. Broken, he coughed, the laughter subsiding into hiccuping breaths. That was a 5, maybe a 6, on a scale you people haven't even invented yet. He sucked in a deep, shuddering breath, his grin returning wider and more unnerving than before. You think you're interrogating me, Sub-Commander. You're not. You're the one on the clock. 30 hours, right? Tick-tock. The cold prick became a shard of ice in Forlack's gut. The human's words were madness, the ramblings of a shattered mind. And yet, the ease of the Astra's destruction, the lack of resistance, the focus on a deadline they themselves had set. Explain, Forlack hissed, leaning close, the scent of human sweat and adrenaline filling his olfactory pits. Reed just looked at him, the eerie calm settling back over his features. You demanded surrender. You broadcast your ultimatum on every frequency to the whole system. Very dramatic, very final. He closed his eyes as if exhausted. A big stick. But you shouted your ultimatum into a cave. Forlack. You just didn't wait to hear the echo. The main fleet communication channel buzzed in Forlack's auditory implant. An alert, low priority. A routine update from the automated monitoring station in the asteroid belt on the system's edge. He almost dismissed it, his focus locked on the infuriating, laughing creature before him. But the human's words echoed. You didn't even look at the wreckage. With a twitch of his claw, Forlack opened the channel. The technician's voice was bored, routine. Anomalous energy reading from the derelict Terran vessel. Transient spike in low-band gravitational waves. Probably a collapsing power cell. No threat signature. Logging for salvage detail. Gravitational waves. Not weapons plasma. Not engine signatures. Gravitational waves. Reed's eyes snapped open. He had heard the tinny transmission through Forlack's external speaker. The human's face went slack for a second, all traces of pain and laughter wiped away. Then he looked directly at Forlack, and his expression was one of profound, almost pitying clarity. Echo, Reed whispered. At that moment, the lights on the battle dreadnought unwavering resolve, flagship of the 3rd Pacification Fleet, flickered. Not a power failure. A distortion. As if space itself had taken a deep, shuddering breath. And from the dark, silent hulk of the asteroid, adrift amidst its own debris, a single, impossible ripple of distorted light began to expand. The distortion lasted exactly 1.7 seconds. On the bridge of the unwavering resolve, the universe seemed to stutter. Lights dimmed not to darkness, but to a twilight amber. The ever-present hum of the gravity drive slurred, dropping an octave into a stomach-churning groan, before snapping back. Console holograms bled colors, their edges fuzzing into static rainbows. For those 1.7 seconds, the flawless, predictable machinery of the Zilvan flagship felt organic. Sick. Sub-Commander Forlack felt it through the deck plates and in the fillings of his teeth. In the interrogation chamber, the neural restraint chair emitted a sharp pop and a burnt plastic smell as its field generator fritzed. The lights died completely, plunging the room into the deep, sense-dampening black of a warship's interior. Only the weak, green emergency strips along the floor flickered on, painting ghastly shadows. Kalen Reed's laughter had stopped. In the absolute dark, Forlak's secondary thermal pits activated. He saw the human as a blurry orange shape, still restrained, head now lifted, not struggling. Listening. Report. Forlak barked into his implanted comms. Static hissed back, a chaotic blend of overlapping channels. He caught fragments. Power flux in Sector 7, no damage reported, sensor ghost on long range. Then a voice, colder and clearer than the others, cut through. Admiral Zyla's from the command nexus. All stations condition calm. Diagnostic sweep in progress. A transient energy surge in the system star, filtered through the derelict's debris field. A natural phenomenon. Maintain alert status. A natural phenomenon. It was a logical, soothing explanation, the one the fleet's immense, rational mind would cling to, but in the dark, with the scent of ozone and burnt circuits thick in the air, Forlak remembered the human's words. You shouted your ultimatum into a cave, and the human's whisper. Echo. The main light stuttered back on, harsh and unforgiving. Reed blinked against them, his face pale but composed. The unsettling smile was gone, replaced by a look of intense focus, like a technician waiting for a diagnostic result. Forlak's comms chirped, a direct channel from the xenopsychology officer, Zir, sub-commander. The prisoner's biometrics during the event. You need to see this. Secure him, Forlak ordered the guards, his eyes locked on Reed. The human didn't resist as they checked the restraints. He just watched Forlak leave, his blue eyes holding a knowledge that felt like a physical weight. The Xenopsych lab was a nest of soft light and biometric displays, a stark contrast to the brutalist functionality of the interrogation block. Zir, a slender Zilvan whose carapace was etched with the intricate swirls of a scholar caste, gestured to a holoscreen. It showed Reed's vital signs from the chamber. Observe, Zir clicked, her voice a rapid, precise staccato. The moment of the anomaly. A vertical line marked the time. Heart rate, elevated but steady from the earlier interrogation. Adrenaline, cortisol, high baseline. Expected. She zoomed in. At T0 the distortion, there is a sharp, simultaneous drop in all major stress hormones. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, they plummet. See? His galvanic skin, response goes flat. His heartbeat slows by 18%. Forlak studied the graphs. The lines didn't spike in fear or shock. They fell. It was a physiological signature, a profound relief, of a burden lifted. It is a response of a subject who perceives a dire threat has passed, Zir said, her large, black eyes reflecting the scrolling data, or of one who has received a long-awaited signal. It is not the response of a prisoner experiencing a terrifying, unexplained event. He said echo, Forlak stated, the word tasting wrong in his mouth. Zir's antennae twitched. A metaphor, a threat, a message, a countdown. A new voice rasped from the doorway. Commander Kraz, head of fleet security, filled the frame. His carapace was scarred from particle burns, and one of his manipulator arms was a sleek prosthetic. He was old caste, a warrior who distrusted anything he couldn't shoot. The diagnostics are complete. No system damage. No foreign energy residue. It was a hiccup. The prisoner is exploiting it. A psychological tactic. Primitive but effective. He fixed Forlak with a hard stare. Your focus on this one broken human is noted, Sub-Commander. The Admiralty expects the access codes, not philosophical puzzles. The human's vessel caused a hiccup, Forlak countered, feeling the fragile threads of logic trying to weave together. The surge originated from its wreckage. Coincidence, Kraz scoffed. A dying power cell, interacting with our active sensor sweep. We are a fleet of 10,000 vessels. We emit enough energy to destabilize a small star. The debris is reacting to us, not the other way around. He stepped into the lab, his presence making the room feel smaller. The prisoner has resisted standard neural inducement. I authorize the use of deep scan. Zir's antennae flattened in clear distress. Commander, deep scan on a species with unknown neural topography risks irreversible synaptic collapse. We may lose all data. And we may rip the codes from his crumbling mind. Kraz interrupted. We have 30 hours. The hegemony does not negotiate. It dictates. If his mind breaks as a lesson to others, it is an acceptable loss. He turned to Forlac. You have until the next watch cycle to obtain the codes voluntarily. If not, my technicians will take him. That is not a request. Kraz left, a vacuum of silence in his wake. Zir busied herself with her screens, a subtle tremor in her limbs. Deep scan is a butcher's tool. It leaves only pulp. Forlac looked back at Reed's biometrics. The calm line amidst the chaos. The laugh in the dark. You're the one on the clock. He wasn't sure what Reed was, but he was no longer convinced he was broken. Something was waiting. Something that made a human laugh as he was tortured. Replay the long-range sensor log from the anomaly, Forlac ordered. Not just the internal diagnostics. I want the raw feed of deep space. Every frequency. Zir complied, her claws tapping rapidly. The main holoscreen shifted to a view of the starfield, with a bloated orange star of the system, Galad Prime, at the center. The unwavering resolve and the fleet were mere icons. A tiny, blinking marker represented the Astra's debris field. At T0, Zir said. The screen played. For a moment, nothing. Then, a subtle pulse, not in the visible spectrum, but rendered as a concentric ring of violet light on the overlay. It emanated from the debris field. It expanded outward at speeds impossible for any physical particle. It passed through the fleet, causing the internal distortion, and continued, racing into the endless dark of the galactic rim. It's a transmission, Forlac breathed. Of what? Zir asked. It carries no data packets, no modulated signals. It is a carrier wave with no cargo, a shout with no words. Forlac stared as a ripple on the screen dissipated into the nothingness. A shout, an echo. You shouted your ultimatum into a cave. Humanity's home system, Sol, was on the other side of contested space. They had no ships that could reach here in 30 hours. No weapon that could challenge the fleet. The ultimatum was a formality, a courtesy before annihilation. Unless direction, Forlac demanded, a cold certainty crystallizing in his gut. Plot the vector of that wave, not where it came from, where it was aimed. Zir's claws flew. The starfield on the holoscreen rotated, lines of trajectory extending from the debris field. The violet ripple's path stretched out, a perfectly straight line avoiding stellar gravity wells. It shot past the frontier of surveyed space, past the empty nebulae, into a region of the galactic spiral arm listed on Zilvan charts as Void 337, uninhabited, devoid of resources, a dead zone, a perfect place to hide something you didn't want found. There is nothing there, Zir stated, consulting the stellar database. No stars, no planets, a 3-light-year expanse of interstellar dust and dark matter. Forlac's comms buzzed. It was the bridge. Subcommander Forlac, report to the Admiral's briefing room immediately. The tone was urgent. It wasn't about the prisoner. In the corridor, the ship's normal rhythm felt like a facade. The Marines at their posts, the technicians at their consoles, they moved with the quiet efficiency of an organism that believed itself invulnerable. Forlac felt the shiver in the hive mind. The hiccup had been felt by all. The briefing room was a sphere of projected star maps. Admiral Xylas, an ancient Zilvan whose carapace was the color of weathered stone, stood at the center. Kraz was there, along with the chief science officer and the fleet navigator. All looked at a single, troubling datum. 5 minutes ago, Xylas began, his voice like grinding rock. The long-range tachyon detection grid registered an event. In the region cataloged as Void 337. He gestured, and the star map zoomed into the dead zone. A point of light, previously non-existent, now pulsed a soft, angry red. A microscopic, instantaneous pinprick of space-time curvature. It lasted for a fraction of a nanosecond, smaller than the emergence of a single quantum particle. A sensor error, Kraz said, but without his earlier conviction. The grid registered 17 identical errors, the science officer chimed in, her voice tense. In a perfect logarithmic sequence, leading from the edge of the void toward us. The room was silent. They all looked at the line of red dots on the map. They formed a path, a heading. It was a path that began at the exact extrapolated endpoint of the ripple that had emanated from the asteroid. Forlak's neural implants calculated the relative positions, the timing. The ripple was a signal. The pinpricks in the void were a response, a mobilization. Distance? Admiral Zylas asked. The navigator's answer was a whisper of dread. The first detected pinprick is 12 light years from our current position. The human ultimatum deadline was 28 hours away. Travel time for a hegemony fast-strike vessel? Zylas pressed. At maximum superluminal burn, 26 standard hours. The math was a cold, silent scream in the room. The timing was not a coincidence. It was an appointment. Kalen Reed hadn't been laughing from madness or defiance. He had been laughing from the sheer, terrifying relief of a soldier who has just heard the cavalry come over the hill. A cavalry the enemy didn't believe existed, arriving on a schedule only the soldier knew. Forlak finally spoke, his words dropping into the stunned quiet. The human admiral, he is not a prisoner. He is a beacon, and we are not the interrogators. He met the admiral's age, calculating eyes. We are the bait. The silence in the briefing room was a physical thing, dense and cold. The projected star map, with its trail of impossible pinpricks leading toward them, seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Admiral Zylas was the first to move. He turned from the tactical display, his stone-colored carapace seeming to absorb the angry red light of the alert sigils. His primary eyes, deep-set and glinting like obsidian chips, fixed on Forlak. A beacon. Explain. Forlak felt the weight of Commander Kraw's glare, but the earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by a watchful, predatory tension. The data on the screen had punctured the certainty of the fleet. The human vessel, the Astrid, Forlak began, forcing his voice into its usual dry, analytical rasp. It did not fight. It did not run. It allowed itself to be disabled with trivial ease. Our scans confirmed it was lightly armed, a scientific exploration vessel. We saw what we expected to see. And what did we not see? Zylas's voice was dangerously soft. We did not see its mission, Forlak said. He gestured, and Zir, hovering at the periphery, transferred the data from the interrogation chamber. Reed's biometrics, the eerie calm during the distortion, filled a secondary screen. The prisoner, Kalen Reed, is not a soldier in despair. He is an operator who has completed his primary objective. His laughter was not insanity. It was a release of immense psychological pressure. The echo he referred to was not a metaphor. It was a technical confirmation. The chief science officer, Toll, a Zilvan whose carapace was etched with luminous data glyphs, stepped forward. The energy pulsed from the wreckage. We have reclassified it as a directed neutrino gravity burst. It is a signaling technology of elegant simplicity. It uses space-time itself as a medium. It is not a message you decode. It is a message you feel, like a tremor in the bedrock. A distress call, Kraz growled. No, Toll countered, her voice humming with a scholar's excitement despite the dread. A distress call shouts, I am here. Help me. This was different. It was a calibration signal, a targeting ping of immense precision, containing the exact location, mass, and energy signature of our entire fleet. It was not a cry for help. It was a data packet, a set of coordinates for a return strike. The words hung in the air. A return strike from a region of space they had declared empty. Who? Admiral Zylas asked a single, vital question. The Terrans have no presence beyond the Orion Spur. Their fastest ships would take months to reach this position, even if they knew we were here. Forlak called up the cultural database on the humans. Scraps of information looted from fallen colonies, deciphered from their primitive planetary networks. He filtered past the data on warfare, politics, industry. He searched for their myths, their monsters. On Earth, Forlak said, the words tasting alien, they have stories of creatures that sleep in the dark places, under mountains, at the bottom of seas, in the voids between stars. They do not call them monsters. They call them, he struggled with the translation, old ones, ancient, patient, And in their oldest stories, the way you wake such a thing is not by shouting at it. It is by bleeding in its waters, by disturbing its silence. He pointed to the trail of red pinpricks on the star map. We shouted our ultimatum across every frequency, a declaration of dominance, an act of profound noise in the silent sea. The asteroid did not come to fight us. It came to find us, to mark us, and then, with its dying act, it sent that marker not to Earth, but into the dark, to something that values silence above all else. Kraz let out a derisive click. You are citing primitive superstition as tactical intelligence? This is fear-mongering, forlack, the stress of command. What is the alternative explanation, Commander? Admiral Xylas interrupted, his ancient eyes never leaving the pinpricks. That the humans have secretly developed faster-than-light technology an order of magnitude beyond ours, hidden an entire fleet in a sterile void, and baited us into attacking a sacrificial lamb to justify a counterstrike, which scenario requires a greater leap of faith. Kraz had no answer. Time to intercept? Xylas asked the navigator. Based on progression of the space-time anomalies, the leading edge will reach the system's outer cometary cloud in approximately 22 hours, well before the ultimatum deadline. 22 hours. The math was brutal. The pinpricks were moving at speeds that defied known physics, not traveling through space, but folding it, the wake of something vast stirring from its sleep. Battle readiness. Xylas commanded, and the fleet's instinct took over. Alerts flashed across the system. The immense swarm of Zilvan vessels, from the planet-cracking dreadnoughts to the swift dagger-like escorts, began to shift formation. Shields cycled to maximum. Weapon capacitors hummed, charging. The orderly ballet of an apex predator preparing to swat a fly. But a new tension threaded through the comms. It was no longer the clean, hungry anticipation of a pacification. It was the unease of a hunter who hears an unfamiliar growl from the darkness behind him. Forlack returned to the interrogation block. He did not go to the observation chamber. He entered the cell. Kalen Reed looked up. He was no longer smiling. He looked tired, hollowed out, but his eyes were clear. The guards had removed him from the broken restraint chair, but magnetic cuffs bound his wrists and ankles to the floor. "You figured out the dinner bell," Reed said, his voice hoarse. "You lured us here," Forlack stated, standing over him. "Your ship, your crew, they were all expendable. To get our signature. To make us shout." "You were always going to shout," Reed replied, a flicker of the old defiance returning. "It's what you do. You can't help it. Big sticks, remember? We just made sure you were standing in the right room when you swung it. What is coming, human?" Forlack demanded, his patience a frayed wire. "What sleeps in the void?" Reed was silent for a long moment. He looked at his scarred, dirty hands. "We didn't build them. We found them. Or they found us, drifting in the Orc cloud, 1,000,000,000 miles from the sun. A relic older than our planet. A sentinel. We called it the Grief Singer." He let out a short, breathless laugh. "Bad name. It doesn't sing. It corrects." "Corrects what?" "Loud things," Reed whispered, meeting Forlack's gaze. "Things that break the peace. For 1,000,000,000 years, it listened to the quiet song of the cosmos, the spin of galaxies, the whisper of background radiation. Then we came. Radio waves, nuclear explosions, FTL wake turbulence. We were static. An error in the music. It began to stir. We realized we had two choices. Try to destroy it. And we didn't have a stick that big. Or learn its rules. It's one simple rule." Forlack's blood ran cold. "Silence." Reed nodded slowly. "It doesn't care about life. Or empires. Or morals. It cares about noise. Catastrophic, aggressive, propagating noise. A supernova is natural. A purposeful antimatter detonation is not. The pulse from your pacification of New Thessa, that reached its nest 3 years ago. It started waking up. The asteroid's mission was to find the source of the noise, to deliver an invitation. And you accepted. You are sentencing your own world to die." Forlack hissed. "Our ultimatum stands. We will glass Earth before this thing arrives. For the first time, genuine emotion, a profound, weary sorrow, crossed Reed's face. You won't. You can't. To fire your primary weapons, to make that much noise now, with it so close and already hunting, it would be like screaming in the ear of a thing that hates screams. You'd be painting the biggest target in the universe on your forehead. Your only chance, the only chance for any of us, is to shut down, power down everything, go dark, be silent as a grave, and hope it passes you by. The sheer, terrifying logic of it unfolded in Forlak's mind. It was a cosmic trap. The Astrid had not brought a weapon. It had brought a referee. And the referee's sole rule was, no fighting. His comms buzzed. It was Zir, sub-commander. Long-range sensors are now detecting gravitational shadows. At the edge of Void 337, dozens of them. They are occluding background stars. The scale, her voice trembled. The scale is beyond measurement. Power down. Reed urged, his eyes desperate now. Tell your admiral. Shut off the engines. Kill the reactors. Go to battery power. No transmissions. No active scans. Be a rock. It's the only way. Forlak turned and ran for the bridge. The idea was heresy. It was surrender. It was the antithesis of everything the Zilvan hegemony stood for. But as he raced through the corridors, the ship vibrated with a new, deep thrum. The sound of main dorsal particle cannons charging for planetary bombardment. The sound of a stick raised high, ready to smash the insolent human world. It was the loudest sound in the system. And in the silent dark of the cell, Kalen Reed closed his eyes, waiting for correction to begin. The bridge of the unwavering resolve was no longer a place of silent efficiency. It hummed with a palpable, electric dread. The main viewer showed the fleet, a magnificent swarm of lethal geometry, arrayed against the star-flecked black. But every eye was drawn to the secondary display, the one showing the approaching gravitational shadows from Void 337. They weren't ships. They were absences. Bites taken out of the starfield, blotting out entire constellations with their sheer, light-warping bulk. Admiral Zyla stood rooted before the tactical hologram, his age claws tracing the impossible trajectories. Estimated mass? He asked, his voice stripped of all inflection. The science officer, Toll, seemed to shrink into her carapace. Indeterminate, Admiral. Their gravitational lensing suggests planetary-scale densities, but they are moving at speeds that should be impossible for objects of that mass. They are not violating physics. They are ignoring the parts they find inconvenient. Weapons analysis. None detected. No energy signatures. No drive emissions. No power readings of any kind. They are colder than the background void. They are not flying, Admiral. They are falling through folded space, like stones dropped through a fabric. Commander Kraz shoved his way to the holo display, his prosthetic limb whirring. Then they are rocks, and rocks can be shattered. Battle formation Sigma. All vessels, target the lead shadow with synchronized plasma lances. We will crack this grief singer open and see what machinery hides inside. No. All heads turned. Forlak stood at the entrance to the bridge, his carapace still streaked with grime from the interrogation block. The force of his denial echoed in the sudden silence. You overreach, Sub-Commander, Kraz snarled. The human, Forlak pressed, striding forward, ignoring protocol. He explained it. It is not a weapon. It is a corrective force. It targets noise. Aggressive, propagating energy. If we fire the main batteries, the combined energy signature will be the loudest event in this sector since the system's star ignited. We will not be attacking it. We will be aiming it directly at us. Admiral Zyla's ancient eyes narrowed. The human seeks to disarm us with superstition. With physics, Forlak insisted. He pointed a trembling claw at the viewer. We have scanned it with every active sensor. We see nothing. It is a perfect stealth entity because it does not emit. It only absorbs. Absorbs sound, light, energy, kinetic impact. To fight it is to feed it. Our only chance is to stop. To be silent. Heresy. Kraz boomed. The hegemony does not cower in the dark. We are the apex of creation. We will burn this phantom from the sky, and then burn its human puppets from their world. He turned to the gunnery station. Target lock. On my command. Admiral, please. Forlak's voice was raw. Listen to the logic. The human ship's signal was a trigger. Our ultimatum was the primer. We are holding a live explosive, and Commander Cross is demanding we strike it with a hammer. The only way to survive is to put the hammer down. For a long, agonizing moment, Admiral Zyla said nothing. He looked from the advancing, star-eating shadows to the resolute, fire-ready posture of his fleet, the very embodiment of Zylvan might. He saw the glorious, proud history of 1,000 pacifications, and he saw the absolute, chilling nullity on the sensors where the enemy was. Hold the firing order, Zyla said, his voice barely a whisper. Kraz whirled. Admiral. Hold. The word cracked like a whip. All vessels, go to communication silence. Passive sensors only. Reduce reactor output to station-keeping minimum. Stand by. A wave of stunned disbelief rippled through the bridge crew. It was unprecedented. It was unthinkable. It was, to the Zylvan warrior spirit, a humiliation worse than death. But they obeyed. The aggressive targeting scans winked out. The deep thrum of the main engines faded to a ghost of itself. The fleet became a quieter, darker constellation, adrift in the silent sea. On the viewer, the lead gravitational shadow entered the system's outer boundary. It passed through the sparse debris of the Orc cloud. As it did, something happened. Not an explosion. An erasure. A rogue planetoid of dirty ice, 300 kilometers across, simply ceased to be. One moment it was a pale, pitted dot on the scanners. The next it was gone. No flash of energy. No cloud of debris. It vanished into the shadows of event horizon-like periphery without a sound, without a ripple. It was subtracted from existence. A collective shudder passed through the bridge. It consumes mass, Toll whispered, her data glyphs pulsing with frantic analysis. Not with energy, with topological displacement. It is not destroying matter. It is relocating it, to where I cannot say. It's taking out the trash, Forlak said, the human's words chilling him. Clearing the noise. A rogue ice ball makes sound. Gravitational perturbations. Micrometeoroid collisions. It is an irregularity, so it is being corrected. The shadow moved on unperturbed, implacable. Its course was not aimed at the fleet. It was on a direct vector for Galad Prime, the system's star. It's going for the sun, Kraz breathed, a terrible awe finally breaking through his fury. The ultimate source of the system's noise, Forlak agreed. The human said it corrected loud things. What is louder than a star? They watched powerless as the shadow approached the star's corona. The star's frantic solar flares, its raging plasma loops, seemed to stretch toward the shadow, then smooth out, like a pond's surface becoming glass. The star didn't dim. Its light simply stopped fluctuating. It became a perfectly steady, unnaturally placid sphere of fusion fire. The shadow lingered at its edge for a time. Seconds, hours, time itself seemed to stutter, and then moved on, leaving a silent, corrected star in its wake. Its new heading was unambiguous. It turned toward the heart of the fleet, toward the source of most recent, most egregious noise, the Zylvan Hegemony's third pacification fleet. Panic, cold and silent, erupted on the bridge. Officers looked to the Admiral, to Kraz, to their weapons consoles. The urge to fight, to scream their defiance into the coming dark, was a biological imperative. All vessels, Kraz screamed, seizing the moment. We are under existential attack. Total volley. Fire. Belay that order. Xylas roared, but it was too late. The command had been given. Across the fleet, 10,000 vessels, acting on standing protocols. Unleash hell. Concentrated beams of star-hot plasma, lances of accelerated matter, and swarms of singularity warps converged on the lead shadow. The combined release of energy would have vaporized a gas giant. It was the most violent, loudest act of war in this quadrant of the galaxy in a millennium. The light of the volley raced toward the shadow and died. It didn't hit a shield. It didn't explode. The brilliant, catastrophic light simply went out. As it reached the shadow's boundary, it vanished. The silence that followed was deeper than before, a void where even a memory of sound seemed stolen. The shadow did not change course. It did not speed up. It continued its serene, inevitable approach. It passed the outermost picket ships. They were not destroyed. They were simplified. One moment, a complex, 5-kilometer-long warship with a crew of thousands, buzzing with systems and thoughts and life. The next, a smooth, featureless, cold obsidian sphere, tumbling silently in the void. All noise, all complexity, all difference erased. The terror was now absolute. The fleet shattered. Discipline evaporated. Ships scrambled, engines flaring as they tried to flee in every direction, broadcasting desperate distress calls, firing wild shots at the advancing nothingness. Each burst of engine power, each transmission, each weapon discharge was a flare in the dark, a ringing bell. And one by one, the shadow, and the others now drifting into the system behind it, found them. They were smoothed into silence, made into perfect silent stones. On the bridge of the unwavering resolve, chaos reigned. Kraz was bellowing contradictory orders. Xylas stood frozen, watching his legacy be unmade. Forlac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. He sprinted back to the interrogation block. The guard were gone, fled to their doom. He used a manual override, the power failing, and wrenched the cell door open. Kalen Reed looked up, his face pale in the emergency lights. The ship shuddered around them. "It's too late, isn't it?" Reed said softly. "You fired." They fired. Forlac gasped, fumbling with the magnetic locks on Reed's cuffs. "How do we stop it?" "You don't." The cuffs clicked open. Reed rubbed his wrists, his movements slow with profound, cosmic grief. "You broke the only rule. The singer is here. It will finish its correction. It will quiet the system. There must be something." Reed looked at him, and in the human's eyes, Forlac saw no triumph, only an endless, weary sadness. "There is one thing, the quietest thing in any system." "What?" "A dead ship." Reed met his gaze. A ship with no power, no life signs, no heartbeat, just cold metal and vacuum. The Astrid's wreckage will probably survive. It's already silent. We have to get to an escape pod. Jettison it. Then you have to manually trigger a full reactor scram and vent the atmosphere. Make this ship a corpse before it reaches us. It was a final, horrific surrender. To kill their own vessel. To play dead. Forlac didn't hesitate. He grabbed Reed and pulled him into the corridor, now lit only by frantic red strobes. They fought their way through panicking crew toward the auxiliary pod bay. Around them, through viewports, they saw the silent, terrible ballet of correction. A dreadnought, its engines at full burn, became a smooth, dark sphere mid-thrust. A cloud of fighter craft dissolved into a harmless, silent dust. They reached the pod. Forlac shoved Reed inside. "Go." Reed stared. "You're not coming?" "Someone has to stay to trigger the scram and manual vent. The systems are failing. It must be done by hand." Forlac's voice was calm. It was the first clear thought he'd had since the shadow appeared. Reed, the enemy, the architect of this ruin, nodded once, a flicker of respect in his haunted eyes. "Good luck, Sub-Commander." Forlac slammed the hatch release. The pod shot away into the chaotic dark. He turned and ran for engineering, for the primary reactor control nexus. Alarms were failing. Lights were dying. The ship was screaming its death throes, and that scream was a beacon. He reached the nexus. Through a heavy viewport, he saw the shadow filling the world. It was not black. It was the absence of color, of depth, of meaning. It was the end of noise. His claws flew over the manual override panel. He initiated the total reactor scram. A deep, final shudder ran through the unwavering resolve as the heart of its power went cold. He slammed the heel of his claw onto the atmospheric purge lever. With a great, final sigh, the air fled the ship. Silence. Absolute, perfect silence. Forlac floated in the dark, freezing engineering nexus, his body already aching from the cold and vacuum. He turned to the viewport. The shadow was there just outside, It enveloped the ship. He saw nothing, an endless, serene, quiet nothing. He felt a profound, irresistible pressure, not on his body, but on his self, on his memories of engine hums, of battle cries, of victory chants, on the noise of his own thoughts. It all began to smooth out, to soften, to quiet. He wasn't afraid. The fear was too loud. It was being quieted, too. The last thing Subcommander Forlack of the Zilvan Hegemony perceived, before the silence became total, was a final, fleeting impression, not a sound, but the memory of a sound, the faint, echoing, terrible laughter of a human, ringing in a silent cave that was now, and forever would be, still.